Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Back on the Seagull Challenger today. Last time we built a wing, today we're going to put together the fuselage, or at least some of it. As usual, I'm going to completely ignore the manual. I went through it a couple of times, got the gist of it, figured it was missing some steps, and more importantly it didn't mention all the parts. The plan is fairly handy, but it doesn't cover all the parts either. Probably not the best kit to build if you've never built one before. Right. To start, we're going to stick the fuselage sides together. You will know you've got the right bits as the joints only properly fit when you have them right. Looks a lot like the joints were done by hand in the CAD software rather than by design, but it works, so good enough. We need these bits to be completely flat. I use a sheet of glass wrapped in some cling film. Not ideal as the thin sino will leach through, but it does the job. Lay the sides down and add some weight to keep them in position. Run some thick sino into the gaps, use plenty, and I'm going to use a little bit of thin sino to soak into the split that was along the grain. The thick sino will take quite a while to fully harden, and we need to be able to handle the parts without it falling apart. So leave it for a good hour or so. When it's nice and solid, peel the sides off the cling film and inspect the joints. The outside faces should be fairly smooth, and more importantly the sides should be nice and straight. Next, I think we'll attach the stringers to the sides, F17 and 18. F18 goes on the top edge, quite obvious due to the bit for the tail seat. The easiest way to guarantee the position is to use the formers. They have a nice little cutout that fits the stringers. We're not going to glue them in, just use them to hold everything in place. Using some blocks to weigh everything down, then a spot of thin sino between the formers, just enough to tack it in place. Then we pop in W17 along the bottom. Be careful as it does have a right way round. Up at the end where the part number is, the end isn't cut at 90 degrees. It's cut so it will butt up against the doubler. So make sure you get it the right way round. Then just weigh it down, use the formers for position and tack it down with some thin sino. Give that a couple of minutes to dry and add some extra thin sino along the stringers to make it all nice and solid. Just try and keep it flat. The other side panel is exactly the same. Glue the stringers in with the formers to line it all up. Okay, so the front formers all fit at 90 degrees to the sides, so we can pop those in right away. First though, it's a good idea to make sure servo fits in their slots. Remember the wing mounts were a little bit undersized. Turns out the fuselage slots are quite a bit oversized, but it should be close enough. The vertical formers start at F1, the Firewall, F2, F3, and so on. For now, we'll just dry fit to make sure it all goes together nicely. The undercarriage plate fits with the single hole towards the tail. The wing mount won't stay in on its own, but it goes in here. The servo mount is as far back as we want to go, as the fuselage starts to taper and the formers won't be at 90 degrees to the fuselage sides. With a square to keep the formers straight, tack them in with a drop of thin sino. I'm going to start with F7, 6, 5 and servo tray. Then pop in the aluminium jig. It's easier to do this after sticking in a couple of front formers so it's not flapping around in the breeze when you're trying to glue things together. F2 and the fuel tank tray now. Usually models get built with a few degrees of side thrust, which would suggest the front edge of the tray should be at an angle. But if I hold up the square, it's looking pretty straight to me. Means it shouldn't matter which way up it goes. The tray will hold F2 square, so just tack it in with some sino. F1, the Firewall, has a rectangular cutout for the jig, so slot it into the tabs in the side and tray, then pull the jig forwards. I'm not going to glue it yet. I want to see if there's any wiggle room for side and down thrust when we get the other side on. The jig should hold it well enough for now. The short formers, F3 and 4, can go in now, along with the undercarriage mount and wing mount. But I'm not going to glue them in. The tabs will keep them in place for now, just in case we need to adjust them later. It will be much easier to remove them without the glue. The other fuselage side can go on now, making sure all the tabs fit nicely. A couple needed a little bit of a wiggle, but for the most part it's all a very nice fit. Add some weight near the tabs, make a note of which ones we don't want to glue, the undercarriage and wing mounts, then go at it with a thin sino. Just a drop on each of the tabs, just enough to hold it all together. Give it a few minutes to dry and inspect your work. It should all be nice and straight. If you have a twist, make a note of it and apply a little bit of opposite twist when we get to the tail formers. To try and add some more rigidity to the front, I'm going to fit this cap piece. It should tie the front together nicely, helping to keep its shape while we're handling it. The top of the fuselage sides have little tabs that fit into slots that make it nice and simple to fit. Press it into place and then apply some thin sino. Let's check the firewall now. The fuselage sides taper very slightly front to back. If we look at the angle on this side, it's near enough 90 degrees. The other side though, there's a small gap. This would give us a little bit of side thrust. Perfect. Looks like they built it into locating tabs in the fuselage sides, but didn't get the tank tray to match. It'll work though, so the firewall can now get glued in. Hold the sides firmly while you add the thin sino. We don't want any gaps. The firewall, especially with a 4-stroke engine, will see a lot of vibration. The rest of the formers can slide onto the jig now. They'll go on both ways, but to have the pushrod holes lined up, you need to make sure the part numbers are readable from the front of the fuselage. F8 to 11 fit on the jig, 12 and 13 just fit in their slots. A couple of pegs on the tail is good enough to hold it all together. There's a couple of bits not mentioned anywhere next. The F14s, these are doublers with slots in for F8. They reinforce the side panel joints, but it seems they didn't quite fully think out the design. The F8s have cutouts for the stringers, but with the F14s it's not needed. But the fix is straightforward, just need to take a couple of millimeters off the side to match the F14s. Like so. The formers now fit nicely with no gaps. Nice. The rest can slot back in too, and some pegs to hold it all together. After making sure it's all sitting straight, the jig really does help with this, quite like that technique, we can start gluing the formers. Just like the front formers, we only want just enough glue to stop it falling apart, just a drop or two. Now the fuselage can hold itself together, F12 and 13 can slot in and get glued. The fuselage is strong enough that these won't have any major effect on the alignment. On the top of the formers there's a cap strip that ties them all together. It only properly fits one way round. The part number overhangs the front. Little bit of sino on the joints, then the partial F7, this one sits at an angle that matches the back of the top hatch. The top slots into the cap strip. You can get the angle by sitting the hatch floor on the top of the fuselage. F7 should line up against the back edge. Only tack it in place just in case we need to adjust it later. I think we're going to work a bit on the bottom now. There's a nice sheet that covers the bottom of the fuselage, but the undercarriage mounting plate comes just below the side panels. This means when the bottom sheet goes on, there'll be a gap between the mounting plate and the bottom sheet. When the undercarriage gets fitted, it will distort the sheet at best, leaving a nasty distorted sheet, or perhaps cracking the wood, weakening the structure. Because we were clever, we didn't glue all the formers in, and the mounting plate can still be popped out. So I cut a little bit of hard balsa to match the face of the mount. The plate can go back in, a little bit of thick sino, and the spacer goes on the bottom. Simple. Once dry, it'll just need a quick sand to match the profile of the side panels. Since I'm quite happy with the alignment now, I'm going to finish gluing the formers in. Going to run a little bit of thin sino along all the joints, making sure it gets to all the corners. There's quite a bit to do. I'm still avoiding the wing mount, as we need to plug in the wings to make sure it's all fully aligned. The wing tabs fit in through large holes in the wings, then in through the fuselage to line up with the mounting plate. Here I fitted the wings, using the supplied bolts to secure the tabs. Some of the scrap fiberglass tube used to get the wing joiner central in the holes. When we get to it, there's a nice big fresh piece in the box. The mounting plate has been tacked in position with a couple of spots of 5-minute epoxy, just enough to hold it in place. Same goes for the tabs in the wing. Once fully hardened, the whole lot comes apart and we're left with perfect alignment of all the bits. To get the mounting plate to match up with the tabs, I had to enlarge the hole in the fuselage to move the plate up a millimetre or so. Remember, the job of the plate is to stop the wings pulling away from the fuselage, not to stop the wings folding up. So, the small amount of material around the tab won't matter. The correct alignment will. I'll end up packing the gaps with some scrap balsa and soaking in some thin sino so it can't come adrift later. And now for everybody's favourite, bending balsa around tight radiuses. The kit comes with some nice cut-out bits of balsa sheet, but again it looks like there's a revision mismatch. The top of the fuselage side panels have some nice little tabs, no doubt to locate the sheets for easy alignment. But the sheets don't have any notches. Nice. You could cut your own notches, but it won't add any strength, so I'm just going to cut away the tabs. To fit the sheet, I'll use the same technique as the wings. Glue the sheet down on one edge, in this case to the top of the fuselage panel, making sure the glue wicks well into the wood, then leave it to fully harden. This joint will be under quite a lot of stress, and we don't want it to pop. Okay, first a test bend. The sheet overhangs the cap strip completely. This won't leave anywhere for the other sheet to attach to. Simple fix, cut some off. Right, starting at the middle former, wrap around the wood and apply some thin sino. Then keep good tight hold of it until the sino is well cured. Then wrap it around the next former and glue, then the next, and well, you get the idea. When the sheet's stuck to all the formers, it needs to be stuck to the cap strip in between. The sheet really doesn't want to be in this curve, so some pegs to clamp it down will help. Then a spot of sino, being careful not to stick the pegs to the balsa. Work your way along until it's all nice and secure. Then spin the model around and admire your work. Nice. Now, the next sheet was a bit more fun, and will serve as a good demonstration of the importance of wood selection. Not all balsa is the same. Some of it is soft and flexible, some of it is very hard and brittle. Used in the right places, it all has its advantages. This bit though is the latter. It's extremely hard and brittle. Not the best for a curved sheet. There's some tricks you can do, like soak it in water, wrap it around some PVC pipe and leave it to dry to get the curve. In most cases though, it's easier just to cut a new part from the right wood. I'm not going to do any of that though. Let's see how wrong this goes. Should be fun. We've removed the tabs, glued the sheet along the fuselage and left it to dry. Right, first attempt. It seems to be curving okay. We might just get lucky. We need to mark the wood so we can match the other sheet. And there it goes. Nice. I'll glue that bit on and try again. Okay, I'm going to glue the sheet to the formers in small sections. Let's see how far we get. Well, that's about halfway, the easiest part of the curve. Getting there, the wood is really pulling against the glue. Need both hands to hold it. It took a long time to harden enough to hold the sheet. In fact, it took so long the camera battery died. Whoops. The sheet ended up cracking twice more. Looked a right mess. But have no fear, it's quite easy to make good. You can see the sections that broke. This leaves gaps in the sheet. Take some strips of scrap balsa, pack all the cracks nice and tightly, and soak in some thin sino. Add some wider strips inside to reinforce the sheeting. Then give it a really good sand. Even after just a rough shaping, you'd never know how bad it was. I've come across quite a few models for sale where the builders screw up the sheet and has given up. Makes for some really cheap airframes if you know the tricks to fix them. Right, before we fit the bottom sheet, we need to add the reinforcements to the firewall. It's just some triangular balsa that goes in the corners. Pop the balsa in and mark it along the firewall and fuselage panel, then cut along the marks. Since the firewall isn't exactly 90 degrees to the sides, you need to press extremely firmly as you apply the glue to get the balsa in full contact. If there's air gaps, the balsa won't be doing anything useful. There's 4 bits to do, 2 on the bottom and 2 on the top. If they end up sticking up past the fuselage sides, give them a bit of a sand so it's all nice and smooth. Right, now we can fit the bottom sheet, which shows another little design problem. If you line up the sheet with the undercarriage holes and work your way to the tail, you will find the last section comes up short. Either the holes are in the wrong place, or at some point the undercarriage mounting plate in the fuselage has been moved. Nice. It doesn't take much to elongate the holes a little though. For good alignment, the front of the bottom sheet needs to be in line with the front of the firewall. While holding it down nice and square, start popping some drops of thin sino along the edge, just enough to hold it down. There's an F26 that slots in right of the tail. This will be to give the tail wheel assembly screws a little bit more to bite into. Not mentioned on the plan or the manual. Then we've got F30, the tail bit of the sheeting. It butts up against the front sheet nicely. Bit of sino around the edges. We can stick that broken bit in now too. This is the bit that we found loose in the box right at the start. Last but not least is F27, another bit of plywood for the tail wheel to attach to. I'm going to attach this last bit with some white glue. It takes a bit longer to dry than the sino, and it will really soak in, making a good strong platform. It will need a few rubber bands to hold it in position while it dries. There's some excess balsa overhanging in various places. To save on sanding, you can trim the balsa with a sharp knife. Makes it that bit quicker later. Just be careful not to have the knife run away and overcut. It's been a few hours now, so the rubber bands on the tail can come off. And I reckon the fuselage is strong enough now, it's well and truly in its final alignment. So the aluminium jig can come out. As long as you only got glue where it's supposed to go, it should just slide out very easily. Most of the formers have breakaway bits around the jig, so don't worry too much. I think we're going to do one more thing today, which is optional, but will give a better end finish. Yes, it's filler time. Same stuff we used on the wing, lightweight, non-shrinking household filler. Where all the tabs go through the fuselage are all prime spots, so they'll get some, along with the seams for the sheeting where the wood isn't quite the same thickness. I also found this bit, F28, that becomes the seat for the tail feathers. Before gluing this in, I gave the side panel a very light sand just to take off any high spots that would stop F28 from fully seating on the fuselage. I've also packed the very end of the tail with some balsa scrap, so when we cut the hinge slot there's some meat behind the end plate. I'll be gluing F28 in with some white glue again. It just takes a bit longer to set and really soaks into the wood for a nice strong joint. It'll need a few rubber bands to hold it in place while it dries. Since it'll take a while to dry, this seems like a good time to end the video. So thanks so much for watching. A thumbs up would be nice, and of course if you're not already, do please subscribe. Bye guys.